Hey, Lee Robinson here from American Sentinel Canine. I figured I'd make a video to go ahead and discuss something, and that is our Patreon page. I get a lot of questions. People hit me up with various questions. And earlier today I shared a video on what to do when a female that's delivering puppies, the puppies are not being passed as quickly as you might expect. At 6:30 or so this morning, Halo had two puppies, and after 9:30 or so, she had still only had two puppies. So we did something that we oftentimes do when a female stops having pups, and sure enough, it worked. There's a third puppy born, and she's back on track. No drugs, no need for any C-sections or anything like that. Of course, we're going to keep our eye on her and make sure things continue to go well, and we're prepared for things should they not go so well. But this is her fourth litter. She's had 3 breedings prior, no problems, and I don't anticipate anything to be any different. So when she took a pause for a few hours, it was time for me to intervene with one of our tips. Now, with that said, I figured I'd go ahead and say, yes, we do have a Patreon page, and on our Patreon page, we share some tips that we don't necessarily share on YouTube. We have a lot of information on our public YouTube channel, but on our Patreon page, because these are paying subscribers that are willing to pay for information that cost me a lot to obtain that information, I appreciate their support. And so I want to up my game on how many videos I've been uploading on my Patreon page. And so some of the topics that we'll have on our Patreon page are going to include more in-depth canine genetics, a little bit about population genetics and how that is relative to breeders. Then we're also going to talk about natural versus artificial selection, a little more in-depth than what I have on my general YouTube page. Another thing that I get asked about a lot is puppy selection. So I'm going to tell you how I select pups, what I look for. Another topic that I've been asked to discuss is imprinting young dogs. Once you select your pup, what's next? How do you go about imprinting for different aspects, such as environmentals or obedience work or sport bite work or personal protection, which is my personal interest, or perhaps even hog hunting if that's your thing, since we have dogs that are involved in all that. And one of a primary thing of that is, people that have protection dogs really need to understand not just operant conditioning, but even more importantly, classical conditioning. And I'll explain that as it pertains to personal protection. But to do that, you have to first learn classical conditioning, which is also called associative learning, and also learn operant conditioning, which is reward and compulsion/punishment based behavior modification methods. Those techniques are certainly beneficial to canine behavior modification or learning, and in my opinion, classical conditioning is absolutely required for a protection dog, and I'll explain that on our Patreon page. Another thing that we want to discuss is when to use food for training and when to use toys, because they both play a role. I kind of have a keep it simple approach. I'll share some of the things that I've learned along my way, which I've been involved in this as a breeder for 20 years, and prior to that I had 10 years of education in animal sciences, reproductive physiology, and I did some training back in the days. We're dealing with the training. We need to include how to incorporate exercise into their training, because exercise can be associated with games, and games can be an excellent motivator when it comes to training. And then we'll have a section on kennel setup and also dealing with breeding difficult dogs, how to go about that to make sure you can do that safely and successfully. These are some topics that I want to hit this summer because we've got a lot of breedings lined up right now. We're going to have a lot of puppies being born, and so I'm going to have plenty of slates to work with. When I say slates, I'm talking about blank slates, and I need to up my game for my Patreon viewers. They hit me up with these questions, and sometimes I hate to say I don't see the questions because they submit them on Patreon. And so if you have a question, I want to ask you for a favor. Please don't send that question through Patreon, because there's so many means of communication. We've got email, text message, Facebook Messenger, Instagram, which I hardly use Instagram. I need to use Instagram more. And then we have the Patreon. Now, the Instagram and the Patreon, I don't really get into like regular maintenance on. So my involvement with Patreon has been basically just to upload a video and hope that it provides information to our subscribers. But there are, of course, times when they send me a message and I don't see it. So if you want to send me a message for a topic that you would like for me to discuss, send me that topic in a text message or an email or through Facebook Messenger, and I will make a video for you. And if you want me to tag you when I load that video up, just let me know and I'll tag you. And if you don't let me know, then I won't tag you, because I don't want to put anybody out there that hasn't asked for me to. So anyway, I will put in the description below a link to our Patreon page, and thank you again for your support. Y'all have a blessed day.